I request all the participants to switch on their cameras. Okay. Good morning, everybody. So, the honorable judges for this preliminary round are Mr. Jaren Asher Josen and Miss Mary Joshi. As Jaren Asher Josen studied law at the Tamil Nadu NLU, Trichy, and graduated in 2018. He started his career as an advocate associated with senior counsel Mr. P.H. Arvind Pandian, handling cases before NCLT, NCLAT, and the commercial litigation before the Madras High Court, whereas Ms. Joshi pursued law from ILS Law College, Pune, thereafter joined the litigation team at Kerala-based tax firm Messrs. Anil D. Nair Advocates. She subsequently moved to Chennai, joined the chambers of Advocate Joseph Prabhakaran in 2018, and worked extensively on indirect tax before CESTAT and Honorable Madras High Court. I'll just quickly explain the rules for the moot. So the rules for today's competition are that each speaker will have a time of 15 minutes. So I'll hold a placard at 3 minutes and 1 minute. And the rebuttals and sub-rebuttals are 2 minutes, like for 1 minute for each participant, which will be at the end. Then the first speaker can yield his time to the second speaker if he completes before 15 minutes. Again, the extra time may be granted up to the discretion of the honorable judges, and the judges are free to give their discretion and the feedback after the speakers have done speaking. So I will start the time as soon as the first speaker of the petitioner starts speaking.
Okay, done.
Yeah.
Okay.
Council takes permission to approach the bench.
Proceed.
Greetings, Your Lordship and Ladyship. Permission to call the bench collectively as Your Lordship.
Granted.
Your Lordship, we are here today to discuss a matter of utmost importance, to right a historical wrong and to provide a chance for the LGBT community to live a life of dignity as enshrined in the Constitution. I am Counsel 1 on behalf of the petitioners, and I will be arguing issues 2 and 4, taking 15 minutes of this Honorable Court's time, while my co-counsel will argue issues 1 and 3, taking another 15 minutes and leaving a minute for rebuttals. If Your Lordship has no further questions, counsels on behalf of the petitioner would like to move to the oral submission of the arguments.
Proceed.
Your Lordship, issue 2 raises the question whether civil rights should be granted to the members of the LGBTQ community. It is submitted before this Honorable Court that civil rights should indeed be granted to the members. In the case of Navjit Singh Johar versus Union of India, Justice D.Y. Chandrachud had stated that, and I quote, "It is difficult to right a historical wrong, but we can set the course for the future, and that it involves much more than decriminalizing homosexuality, and it's about people wanting to live with dignity." And on that note, Your Lordship, I would like to bring into light the case of K.S. Puttaswamy versus Union of India, which held that right to dignity is an inseparable aspect of right to life and is protected under the Constitution. And thus, homosexuality being an orientation and not allowing homosexuals the right to marry their partners diminishes this dignity and, in fact, strips away this dignity of an individual who happens to find expression in this orientation. Your Lordship, if the members of the LGBTQIA plus community are not being allowed to legitimize their marriage to legitimize their relationship through marriage, or aren't able to raise a child as a couple, either through modes of surrogacy or adoption, this is denying over 2.6 million Indian citizens who proudly belong to the community their right to live with dignity. Your Lordship, secondly, moving on to the well-known works of Justice G.P. Singh, known as the Principles of Statutory Interpretation, it states that the court is free to apply the current meaning of a statute to present-day conditions. And this was applied in the case of Arun Kumar versus Inspector General of Registrations, wherein the court had stated that the expression bride used in the Hindu Marriage Act cannot have a static meaning and should not be read in a manner to mean a person assigned the gender female at birth. The court had also cited Article 16 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which dwells into the intimate lives of humans and says that every adult has the right to marry and have a family if they choose to. If it may please the court, the Council of Petition would also like to bring into light the case of Bhagwan Das versus State of Delhi, wherein the court had averted that social evil in society and stated that this social evil practices are a reflection of a feudal mindset, which is a blot in the nation. In this case, society barring LGBTQIA plus communities from getting married is a social evil. Your Lordship, on a concluding note, I would also like to bring it to light that the founding fathers of our Indian Constitution never intended the Constitution to be discriminatory on any grounds and had promised all individuals to be treated equally. Thus, the fact that the LGBTQ community is a minuscule fraction of over 1.3 billion Indians cannot be taken as a ground to deprive them of civil rights which other heterosexual couples enjoy. Thus, it is reiterated that civil rights should be granted to the members of the LGBTQI plus community. If your Lordship has any questions regarding,
I have one.
yes,
So,
Lordship.
pertaining to the maintainability. So, how are you maintaining this particular petition?
Yes, Your Lordship. This was the Supreme Court the apex court had taken suo motu cognizance in this case from various writ petitions filed in different high courts because of grave importance in all the writ petitions filed in high courts.
Okay, so how have you filed your petition in the your parent high court?
That was through 226 in the Constitution. And
okay, which particular writ petition have you filed?
Your Lordship, could you rephrase that question?
Which writ petition did you use while filing this particular petition? Before that,
there was through Article 226, we had approached high courts in order to provide civil rights, and the Supreme Court had taken suo motu cognizance on the writ petitions filed in high courts.
I see. Okay, fine.
Your Lordship, if there are no further questions, I would like to move to issue 4, which deals with which raises the question whether members from this community can be allowed to be married as per the rituals of their respective religions.
Okay, proceed.
It is humbly submitted before this honorable court that members of the LGBTQIA plus community should be allowed to be married as per the rites and rituals of the religion. This will be elaborated in 4 contentions. Firstly, the right to marry given as per the Supreme Court. Your Lordship, given that the right of transgender person to marry has been upheld in the Supreme Court in the case of Nalsa versus Union of India, it stated that they cannot be kept out of the purview of the Hindu Marriage Act, and the same should apply for all members of the LGBTQIA plus community, irrespective of their religion. Secondly, the inherent spiritual equality of Hindus. A non-profit organization called the Hindu HAF, in its policy brief on homosexuality, maintained the stance that Hinduism does not provide a fundamental spiritual reason to reject or exclude individuals from the specific LGBTQI plus community, given their inherent spiritual equality, and should rather accept them as a fellow journers on the path of moksha. Thirdly, the right to freedom of religion. As in the case of Arun Kumar versus Inspector General of Registrations, the court had found that denying 2 practicing Hindus, the petitioners, to marry under Hindu law was a violation of their freedom of religion. Thus, the same can be applied for members of different religions. Fourthly, I'd like to refer to a Hindu text, an ancient Hindu text, the Kama Sutra, which mentioned that members of the third sex, namely transgender, are not ostracized by the Vedas and are even and are also recognized for possessing certain divine powers. And the Kama Sutra, which is an ancient Hindu script, had detailed the acts of sexual pleasures, mentioning that the same-sex experience is to be engaged in and enjoyed for its own sake of the arts. Your Lordship, even in the case of Christianity, the Pope in a recent document called the Francesco had expressed his support for same-sex civil unions, and thus, on a concluding note, members from the LGBTQI community should be allowed to get married as per the rites and rituals of their own religion. If your Lordship has any questions, I'd like to.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Alicia.
My question is whether this divine script or divine books give right for a marriage or divine union, or it gives a right for a sexual pleasure. Both are different. Getting married is different. Right to have sex is different.
Yes,
Supreme Court has decriminalized 377. At the same time, recently, they have said unity in marriage is not allowed and hence not maintained. So under the circumstances, what is your stance?
Your Lordship, I merely brought this ancient Hindu text in order to show that Hindus are not ostracizing members from this community and thus cannot be used as a ground to say that allowing homosexuals to legitimize their marriage will cause social havoc. So that was the only point I was trying to bring up in this argument, Ladyship. If there are no further questions, I would like to yield my time to the second speaker. Thank you. It was an honor arguing.
Counsel seeks permission to approach the dais.
Proceed.
Much obliged, Your Lordship. Your Lordship, as the speaker too, I would be addressing the issue 3 and 1, starting with issue 3, and then I would move on to issue 1. Your Lordship, issue 3 refers to whether or not the customs, traditions, rites, rituals form an exhaustive code as contested by the Republic of Replemento. Your Lordship, firstly, the council would like to state that the customs, traditions, rites, and rituals do not form an exhaustive code. Firstly, talking about the members of the LGBTQIA community, this is a community that has existed from time immemorial. This is a community that has had its own culture embedded, that has had its own place in the Hindu culture. We can see this a few centuries back, wherein which before the British invaded India, members of the LGBTQI community were given powerful positions as ministers in the courts of various rulers in India. So they were clearly respected, and they had their own customary practices, such as a temple known as the Bahuchara Temple in Ahmedabad, Gujarat, had a pond near it, and the belief is that a woman that enters this pond can transform into a man. The temple also, in the temple, the various members of the LGBTQI community, who are also, who in colloquial term is also called as hijras, have the power to bless couples to have Indian kids. As the second speaker, I would like to state that although although they have their own customary practices, they are still Hindus, and and based on Section 3 of the Hindu Marriage Act 1955, the expression custom refers to a rule which, having been continuously observed and practiced for a long time, has obtained the force of law or the power of law among Hindus in a particular local area, tribe, community, group, or family. When we take this definition into account, we can see that the LGBTQI community is a community on its own. Hence, it will have its own customary practices, but at the same time, it will belong to they are part of Hinduism as a religion. Now talking about the changes that were made in the reasons for alienating the LGBTQI community, there have been various Hindu religious texts such as the Vedas, that have stressed on the fact that the members of this community have supernatural powers, and they were always given the respect based on Hindu belief. However, when British invaded India, their Anglican law did not align with the beliefs of the LGBTQI community. Hence, they introduced laws such as the Criminal Tribals Act 1872, which led to the overall alienation of this community from society. If it pleases the court, I would like to move on to the first issue.
Counsel, my question is, recently the government of India has passed an act for transgender protection. Are you aware of that?
Yes, yeah.
What is your stand?
Yeah.
So are you saying that does not protect the rights of transgenders, since he has spoken so?
Your Lordship, there are still rights that need to be given. The rights based on the Transgender the Transgender Protection Act is only with regards to healthcare, whereas there are rights such as the right to marry, which still need implementation.
The Honorable High Court of Madras has recently allowed a transgender person to marry a man. Are you aware of the judgment?
The council pleads ignorance.
Okay.
Much obliged,
Second.
Lordship. If it pleases the court, could I move on to the first issue?
Second.
Much obliged, Your Lordship. The first issue refers to whether members of the LGBTQIA plus community can be included in the Hindu Marriage Act 1955 and the Special Marriage Act 1954. Now, starting with the Hindu Marriage Act, Section 5 of the Hindu Marriage Act talks about the necessities for the solemnization of an individual's marriage. So in these conditions, the gender has not been stressed on. It has not been mentioned anywhere that a marital relationship is a relationship between a man and a woman. There have been usage of terms such as bride and bridegroom. However, we need to understand that even in homosexual couples, one party assumes the masculine role and the other party assumes the feminine role. And the role of bride and bridegroom can be taken up using the same reasoning. We can see this in the Supreme Court case of Arun Kumar versus Inspector General of Registration 2019, in which it was stated that under a transgender woman, transgender can also identify themselves as women or as a bride under the Hindu Marriage Act. Now, this moves on to a concept that has been promoted or encouraged by the Supreme Court on several occasions, and that is gender identity and gender expression. Gender identity refers to the right of an individual to choose a sex of his own liking, and gender expression is the act of expressing one's gender identity. We can see this in the case of the case of Nalsa versus Union of India, in which the Supreme Court stated that all hijras which can identify themselves as transgenders. Now, what we need to understand is hijras not only involve transgenders, but they also involve intersexuals, and the fact that they at this point they are using the concept of gender identity for intersexuals to claim to call themselves or express themselves as transgenders. So now, talking about Section 4 of the now moving on to Special Marriages Act. Section 4 of the Special Marriages Act provides the conditions for the solemnization of an individual's marriage. Even in Section 4 of the Special Marriages Act, it hasn't been clearly mentioned that a marital relationship is a relationship between a man and woman. Yes, agreed. In Section 4C of the Special Marriage Act, it is stated that the male should be 21 years old and the female should be 18 years old. However, it does not. However, going back to the gender identity concept, and here a male can represent a masculine role, and the female can obviously represent the feminine role. Due to which an individual a homosexual couple can get married under the Special Marriage Act. Also, since another reason as to why these members of the LGBTQI plus community need to be included in the Hindu Marriage Act, in the Hindu Marriage Act as well as the Special Marriage Act, especially for the Special Marriage Act, is that it exists for citizens of India. It's not necessarily an act that exists only for a particular religion. It exists for interreligious marriages as well. So since LGBTQI plus community members are citizens of India, of India, this act must apply to them as well. So this can to say, so also the right to marriage is a part of right to life or comes under Article 21, which looks after right to life and personal liberty. And this can be seen in the case of Lata Singh versus State of Uttar Pradesh, wherein which the court stated that this is a free and democratic country, and once a person becomes a major, he or she can marry whoever he or she likes. That will be all, Your Lordship.
Okay, I have two questions.
Yes,
First,
Your Lordship.
have you heard of this concept called civil relationships, civil unions or civil relationships? For both the councils, I'm asking both of them.
Yes, Your Lordship.
Okay, so what are the rights that you get out of a civil relationship or a civil union, which is different from of a marriage? Rights from a marriage and rights from civil relationship.
Your Lordship, a civil partnership is just a legal relationship that is entered by a couple who are registered, and this provides them legal rights to married couples. If you're talking about, are you talking about civil relationship or civil partnership, Your Lordship?
Civil unions is in the one in the UK.
I'm not sure what that's referring to, but civil relationship is.
Okay, is there any provision under or Indian, under the laws of India that provides for this particular relationship to exist? Have you ventured into those research?
As far as I know, India does not recognize civil unions or same-sex marriages, since it does not have a unified marriage law. If I'm not wrong, Your Lordship.
But any person in India can always register under the Special Marriage Act. Won't that apply to them?
Won't that apply to whom, Your Lordship?
Won't that apply to civil relationships as well?
Council 2, if you can.
This council pleads ignorance, Your Lordship.
Council 2.
Yes, Your Lordship.
While arguing your first issue, if I'm not wrong, the first issue, right?
The issue 3, I started with issue 3, Your Lordship. So
where you spoke about gender roles.
yes, Your Lordship.
So when you speak about gender roles and coming to section 4C,
yes, Your Lordship.
Where do you stand? As in the male has completed the age of 21 years and the female age of 18 years. So
yes,
where do you stand in case of an LGBTQ community? How do you want to implement this rule to an LGBTQ community?
Okay, Your Lordship.
Where it clearly states it is a condition, where it clearly states it's a condition at the time of marriage, the following conditions are fulfilled. Namely, the male has completed. Isn't that implied that it should be between a male and female?
Your Lordship, in this scenario, if you look at it that way, when we refer to Hindu Marriage Act, Section 5, a bride refers to a woman. It's a feminine noun, and here female is obviously a feminine noun. So when you look at it that way, the fact that there have been cases under the Hindu Marriage Act wherein which transgenders have been given the right to identify themselves as women, the same can be applied for Special Marriage Act as well.
LGBTQ includes lesbian, gay,
bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, asexual, and its allies.
Yes. So what about the first two? First three, if I may say. Transgender, okay. I agree. If they identify as a woman, yes, they can. Okay. What about the first
Your Lordship? Yeah, Your Lordship. Okay. For example, if it's a relationship between two men, usually even in a homosexual relationship, One assumes a masculine role, whereas the other one assumes a relatively feminine role. In such a scenario, one can assume the role of a male and the other one can assume a role of a female.
I mean, interpretation, that's a very sexual comment that you just made. Is it necessary for one to assume as a feminine role and other to? Isn't that necessary? Two men decided to get married and they got married, and both of them are husbands. Two women decided to get married and they are wives.
Yes, Your Lordship. The council pleads ignorance.
I guess that will be all. I think the respondents can start their arguments right now.
Council seeks permission to approach the podium.
Proceed.
Good morning, Your Honorable Bench. The Council seeks permission to address the bench, to address the bench as Your Lordship.
Proceed.
Much obliged, Your Lordship. Myself and my co-counsel are appearing on the behalf of respondents in the case concerning Rainbow Non-Profit Organization versus Republic of Replemento. The council respectfully seeks permission of Your Lordship to start with the facts of the case. The Republic of Replemento is a secular, socialist, and economic and a democratic nation. The Republic of Replemento has gained popularity in the International Nations Organization. There was a law in the country that criminalized unnatural sexual intercourse irrespective of gender, with or without consent. This law was opposed by the LGBTQIA+ community. Many countries regarded the Republic of Replemento as inhuman and against and the particular law as against the human rights. It was held by the Apex Court of the Republic of Replemento that the right to privacy is a fundamental right, and also that the said law is violative of Article 14, 19, and 21 of the Constitution, and further decriminalized consensual acts of sexual intercourse above 18 years of age. This law was appreciated by the LGBTQIA+ community. The Apex Court didn't discuss the civil rights of the community in the said decision. However, the court dismissed the plea that was filed for granting civil rights to the members of the LGBTQIA+ community. The various petitions were filed before the High Court of the country to read person mentioned in Hindu Marriage Act 1955 and Special Marriage Act 1954 so as to include the member of the same sexual orientation are also included. But it was opposed by the government that it was against culture and ethos of the country. All the cases were transferred to the Apex Court so as to avoid conflicting decisions of various High Court. If Your Lordship is satisfied with the facts of the case, the Council seeks permission to move towards the issue raised.
Proceed.
Much obliged, Your Lordship. Issue number 1, whether or not Hindu Marriage Act 1955 and Special Marriage Act 1954 can be read in a manner so as to include the members of the LGBTQIA+ community. Issue number 2, whether or not civil rights can be granted to the members of the LGBTQIA+ community. Issue number 3, whether or not custom, tradition, rites, rituals form an exhaustive code as contested by the Republic of Replemento. And issue number 4, whether or not members of the said community can be allowed to be married as per the rituals of their respective religions. Your Lordship, issue number 1 and 2 will be dealt by me, and issue number 3 and 4 will be dealt by my co-counsel. If Your Lordship is satisfied with issue raised, the Council seeks permission to move towards argument advance.
Proceed.
Proceed.
Much obliged, Your Lordship. Issue number 1 basically deals with the contention of whether the Hindu Marriage Act 1955 and Special Marriage Act 1954 can be read in a manner so as to include the members of the said community. The answer to this question is very simple, that they can't be included in the act, as Hindu Marriage Act specifically and explicitly mentioned in its section 5 of 1955 that it is not even gender neutral. Section 13 clause 2 of the act explicitly mentioned the grounds for divorce that only a wife can claim. The Special Marriage Act 1954 applies to heterosexual couples since section 4C explicitly talks about the age that the male and female should have for the purpose of marriage. In the case of Padma Sundara Rao versus Tamil Nadu, it was stated that every act must be read as a whole and not in a context. It was contested in this case. Your Lordship, further in the case of Grasim Industries versus Collector of Customs, it was held that no provision in a statute and no word in any section can be construed in a manner so as to include in it in isolation. The elementary principle of interpreting any word while considering a statute is to gather the mens or senatorial legis of the legislature. We cannot accept the petitioner's claim on marriage because the challenge raised is in respect of an issue of personal law, which has constitutional protection. Interference in matters of personal laws is clearly beyond judicial intervention. The judicial must therefore always exercise absolute restraint, no matter how compelling and attractive to do societal good may seem. Morality in a pluralistic society and secular polity would reflect that the followers of various sects have the freedom to practice their faith in accordance with the tenets of their religion. It is irrelevant whether the practice is rational or logical. Notions of rationality cannot be invoked in matters of religion by courts. It is for the legislature to consider whether any act should be amended appropriately so as to take note of the transformation of the society has undergone. These contentions were seen in the case of Sabrimala, that was Indian Young Lawyers Association and others versus State of Kerala, and it was also seen in Soumitra Vishnu versus Union of India. If your Lordship is satisfied with issue number 1, the Council seeks permission to move towards issue number 2.
I have a question for you.
Indeed, your Lordship.
Conditions for a Hindu marriage, right?
Yes, your Lordship.
What is the condition say? Marriage may be solemnized between two Hindus.
Yes, your Lordship.
Coming to 13.1, what does it say? Any marriage solemnized, whether before or after the commencement of this act, may on a petition presented by either husband or the wife. So both are the right. It's not only for the wife. Whereas 13.2 clearly states only for the wife. 13.2, 13.1 as well as section 5 states any two Hindus. Any two Hindus can be anyone, not just a man and a woman.
Indeed, your Lordship. Your Lordship, but as I mentioned earlier, that act cannot be read in isolation. It should be read as a whole. And in section 5, clause C, it specifically talks about bride and groom and the respective age. That is, the bride should be of 18 years of age and the groom should be of 21 years of age. So if we read it as a whole, Hindu Marriage Act is also not gender neutral. And
if I can say, they're generalizing the age to 21 for all, and bridegroom can be two men and bride can be two women, and they decided to get married. They can be two Hindus or under Special Marriage Act.
Indeed, your Lordship, but section 13 clause 2 also talks about the rights of wife, and a wife should and two gay men should not cannot be and one of them cannot be a wife. So
13.1 gives them the ground for divorce.
Pardon, your Lordship.
I'm saying 13.1 gives them the power to give the ground for the divorce.
Your Lordship, in the case of Mr. X versus Hospital Z, it was clearly mentioned that a marriage should be solemnized between two opposite sexes. So it is clear from the fact that Hindu Marriage Act as well as Special Marriage Act don't recognize LGBTQ community in their respective acts. If your Lordship has no further questions, the Council seeks permission to move towards issue number 2.
Yes.
Much obliged, Your Lordship. Civil rights can be termed as a bundle of many rights: right to marry, right to vote, right to own property, right to claim a formal identity through a passport and a ration card, driver's license, right to education, employment, health, and so on. Beside right to marry, each and every right have been given to the LGBTQIA plus community. Even right to adoption have also been given to the said community. Under the Juvenile Justice Act, the LGBTQ community can adopt a child under that act, as the act is gender neutral. Even in the year 2019, the Parliament passed a bill which now can be read as the Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Act, in which the Parliament barred any sort of discrimination against the LGBTQIA plus community. Rights related to marriage can only be granted to the LGBTQ community by the legislature, because area of marriage is wholly dealt by the personal laws of the respective religions. In the case of Maharshi Avdesh versus Union of India, the petition was filed under Article 32 of the Constitution, seeking enactment of the Uniform Civil Code, and the court in this case rejected the petition and observed that these are the issues for the legislature. Again, in the case, Supreme Court held that even codified personal laws cannot be tested on the touchstone of fundamental rights. These all are the matters of legislative action are needed and not judiciary. In the famous case of Sabrimala, that is Indian Young Lawyers Association and others, with the state of Kerala, Justice Indu Malhotra, in her dissenting opinion, observed that equality and non-discrimination are certainly one facet of the constitutional morality. The concept of equality and non-discrimination in matters of religion cannot be viewed in isolation. Constitutional morality requires the harmonization or balancing of all such rights to ensure that the religious beliefs of none are obliterated or undermined. Our laws, our legal system, our society, and our values do not recognize marriage, which is sacrament between same-sex couples. Secondly, any relief granted will run contrary to various statutory laws. This cannot be done. Hence, it should be left in the hands of legislature to decide.
Council, I have a question for you.
Indeed, Your Lordship.
Talk about Transgender Person Protection Act.
Pardon, Your Lordship.
You spoke about Transgender Protection Act, right?
Yes, Your Lordship.
Did you think it is necessary for an act or a certificate from a district magistrate for one to choose the sexuality?
To choose the sexuality?
Which sex they should choose. For a transgender, instead of curtailing the right to choose their freedom to choose their sexuality.
Yes, indeed, Your Lordship. There is a right to choose your sexuality, and no one, not the judiciary and not even the Parliament, are barring any sort of discrimination of such type. Even Section 377 was also decriminalized by the Supreme Court or by the Honorable Supreme Court of India. But this is the matter of right to marriage, right related to marriage, that should not be given by the judiciary, but should only be passed by the legislature. If, as the legislature is connected with the grassroots of democracy, and they know that what is the social fabric, and what is the public policy, and what is the current scenario between the people, so they better know than anyone that any law should become or not.
Okay. Proceed.
If Your Lordship is satisfied with issue number 1 and 2, the council seeks permission to call upon my co-counsel to further deal with issue number 3 and 4. Much obliged, Your Lordship.
Your Lordship and Leadership, the council respectfully seeks the permission of the Honorable Bench to move towards issue number 3.
Yes.
Much obliged, Your Lordship. Issue 3 is whether or not the customs, traditions, rites, rituals form exhaustive code as contested by Republic of Replemento. According to Savaini, a law made without taking into consideration the past historical culture and traditions of the community is likely to create more confusion rather than solving the problems, because law is not a artificial, lifeless mechanical device. According to him, custom is per se law. He says law is based on custom. A custom carries its justification in itself. According to Pluta, the custom is independent of the law of sovereign. It is independent of any declaration or recognition by the state. According to Manu, custom is beyond any law. Henry Maine underlined the importance of custom as a source of law and observed that custom is to society what law is to state. In Varam Pastanji, Gariwala versus Union of India, it was held by the Honorable Supreme Court that Indian legal system is the product of history. It is rooted in our soil, nurtured and nourished by our culture and languages and traditions, fostered and sharpened by our genius and quest for social justice, reinforced by history and culture. The Republic of Replemento is a country where customs, traditions, rites, and rituals are so deep rooted in the minds of the people that it cannot be so easily declared void or can be altered. A review petition has been filed before the Honorable Supreme Court for the reconsideration of the Sabrimala decision that was passed by the Supreme Court. And even after more than 2 years, women are not, they themselves don't want to enter the temple, the Sabrimala temple, as they have their own customary beliefs. It is too hard to be altered, and they say that Lord Ayappa is a celibate, and they do not want. They want to maintain his celibacy. This shows that people of our country are so attached to our customs and traditions that it cannot be so easily changed. Saptapadi, which is that is taking of 7 steps by a bride and a bridegroom around a sacred fire, is considered as the most important customary ceremonies that has to be performed to make any marriage a valid marriage. And it has even been recognized by Hindu Marriage Act 1955 under Section 7, Clause 2. There are total 8 kinds of marriages. 4 of them are civilized and 4 of them are non-civilized. And even all these marriages, based on their customary practices, are accepted and given validation by the courts of law, in the court of law. Then bigamy, which has been prohibited under Section 494 of Indian Penal Code, has even been given it has been prohibited by the court of law, but there are based on various customs, this practice has been given validation. Like when it comes to Muslims, they can have up to 4 wives, and this rule doesn't apply to them. Then it has been held in according to Dharma Shastra, the man is incomplete without his wife, and it is a wife who completes him. She is Ardhangini. A wife is the very source of Purusharth, not only of moksha, not only of dharma, arth, kam, but also of moksha. She is not just Patni, but Dharma Patni. A marriage is ordained as a necessary sacrament for begetting a son. The customs, traditions, rites, and rituals should be kept as exhaustive, because if a marriage, if it will be made inclusive, then the very purpose of the marriage would be lost, and it is better to leave it in the hands of the legislature, because if the judiciary will try to intervene in this would create disharmony in the country. If your lordship and ladyship is satisfied with the arguments raised in issue number 3, the council seeks permission to move towards issue number 4. Much obliged to your lordship. Issue number 4, whether or not members of the said community can be allowed to be married as per the rituals of the respective religion. According to Dworkin, judges, through the rules of precedent, merely discover and declare the existing law and never make new law. B.N. Rao said that Parliament is connected to grassroots level of democracy, and it is better. Whereas most of the judges come from the elite class, due to which they do not know the reality of the society, and it is better to leave it in the hands of the legislature to make any law. The laws related to marriage are, as per the religion, are governed by the personal laws of that particular religion only. And under list C, entry 5, only the legislature has been empowered to amend any part of the personal law, and judiciary should not intervene in this. In Maharshi Avesh versus Union of India, it was held that the court cannot legislate on the matters of personal laws, and it is the legislative mandate to do so. Definitely, their fundamental rights are getting violated, but their fundamental right to practice, profess, and propagate any religion is getting violated. But there are reasonable restrictions subject to public order, morality, and health. It was Justice Indu Malhotra in Indian Young Lawyers Association versus State of Kerala gave her dissenting opinion that courts normally do not delve into the issues of religious practices. Religious customs and practices cannot solely be tested upon the touchstone of Article 14 and principles embedded therein. All the major religions in Republic of Replemento, Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, prescribe their own definition of and conduct of marriage. None of them expressly have provisions or even acknowledge same-sex marriage. In Hinduism, marriage is defined as the joining of two individuals for life so they can pursue dharma, arth, kam, and moksha together. Hindu marriages are recognized by law and are usually between a member of opposite sexes, and the same was held in Mr. X versus Hospital Z. From a Islamic perspective, marriage is considered to be a legal contract or a matrimonial contract between two people, and the two people should be of opposite sex. There is a problem with even accepting people of the same sex in sexually active relationships. The moral and theological argument behind this is that any person who performs homosexual activities challenges the harmony of God's creation, and hence it is revolt against God. In the Christianity, there is no outright definition of marriage. There are several passages in the Bible which seem to imply that marriage is the union of a man and a woman. For example, a passage in the Bible states that husbands should love their wives as Jesus loved the church. The personal laws related to marriage should not be altered by the judiciary. Rather than it should be left in the hands of the legislature, because it is the legislative mandate to amend any part of the personal law and not the judicial mandate. The foundational source of both Hindu law and Mohammedan law are their respective scriptural texts. The primary source of Hindu laws are Shrutis and Smritis, and Mohammedan law is founded essentially on the Quran. It is the legislature who has been empowered to amend it in case of being against public order, morality, and health, and judiciary should not delve into it. If your lordship is satisfied and has no further question, the council seeks permission to move towards the prayer. Much obliged, your lordship. Therefore, in the light of issues raised, arguments advanced, and authorities cited, it is humbly requested that this honorable court may be pleased to adjudge and declare that the Hindu Marriage Act 1955 and Special Marriage Act 1954 cannot be read in a manner so as to include the members from the LGBTQIA+ community. That all the civil rights have already been provided apart from rights related to marriage, which should only be provided by the legislature. That the members of the said community should not be allowed as per the rituals of their respective religions until legislature comes up with any law. That the matters related to same-sex marriage should be left in the hands of the legislature, as it is the legislative mandate to bring changes in the personal laws and pass any such order, writ, or direction as the honorable court deems fit and proper. For this, the respondents shall duty bound pray.
If there are no questions by the judges, we can move to the rebuttal rounds. So I'll start counting 1 minute as soon as the speakers for the petitioners will speak.
Your Lordship, Speaker 1 had mentioned that Hindu Marriage Act is not gender neutral because of Section 13.2. Again, Section 13.2 of the Hindu Marriage Act is provided as additional security for the woman representing a divorce petition. Secondly, no judicial review for personal laws should be considered. On the contrary, there are various Supreme Court cases where it has tested the aspect of personal laws on the touchstone of fundamental rights, such as Madhu Kishwar versus State of Bihar, and also Geeta Hariharan versus Reserve Bank of India. Thirdly, Speaker 1 had also mentioned that right to adoption, as per the right to adoption, is gender neutral and allows homosexual couples to adopt children. This is not true because the eligibility criteria, as mentioned by the CARA, does not allow a couple to adopt a child unless they have 2 years of stable marital relationship. So, moving forward, Speaker 2 had mentioned that custom is beyond any law. This is, if your Lordship will grant me 15 more seconds to finish. Yes, Your Lordship. So, in our Indian Constitution is our Constitution and is not for a specific community. So, a custom shouldn't strip away the dignity or shouldn't diminish the dignity of a particular LGBTQ community just because it's a custom followed for practice for ages. That's all, Your Lordship.
Okay.
So I'll count the time for the Council of Respondents as soon as they start speaking for the rebuttal.
Okay.
Your Lordship, if there have been many cases where judiciary has intervened in the personal laws, but this is a matter which is highly sensitive. The matters related to marriage is highly sensitive, and it requires legislature to make a law, because if judiciary will come up with any law or anything like that, then the social fabric of our country will be destroyed, and it will not only destroy the social fabric but also destroy the constitutional fabric, since in our constitution the powers between the legislature, executive and judiciary has been divided. So it's better to leave it in the hands of the legislature to make any law. And the maintainability clause that has been said by the petitioners is it cannot be held as valid, because they have said that the petition has been filed under 226. Your Lordship, much obliged, Your Lordship. The petitions were filed under Article 226 in the High Courts. But when the Supreme Court transfers the cases, then the Supreme Court has been empowered under Article 139 Clause A. So the jurisdiction is not right. And in Nalsa versus Union of India, the Supreme Court, in fact, Justice Sikri has said that gender identification is of prime importance. Then only the rights will be given. But in that case, the Supreme Court has not talked about right to marry or rights related to marriage. And then in Hindu Marriage Act, the petitioners contested that it should be read in a manner so as to include the members of the LGBTQIA+ community. This cannot be done because Section 13 subsection 2 clearly mentions that there are various grounds based on which a wife can claim a divorce. And Section 5 subsection 3 also talks about that a bride and a bridegroom. So the statute should be read as a whole and not in the bits and pieces. Thank Your Lordship, that's it from my side.
Now Your Lordship and the Ladyship are free to give feedback on the discretion to the speakers.
Okay. So with regard to team number 1, first of all, you didn't start with a prayer. No. and the facts of the case. If I recall, you didn't start with the facts of the case. Am I right? That is, you may unmute now. Yeah.
Yes, Your Lordship.
I understand, because the fact is you started with the issue number 2 and 4, and the second speaker started with 1 and 3. But it's actually really important to brief the tribunal or the bench as to what the facts of the case are, which I think the respondent team has done it, which actually helps us to grasp what is happening. I know they have provided us with the memorials and all the orientation was given to the judges, but it's actually great to hear your standpoint.
Noted,
Yes,
yeah.
that is one. And second speaker, I think you forgot to state the prayer. Am I right?
Your Lordship, actually, yes, Your Lordship. After my speech, after you asked your questions, then I forgot to say the prayer.
Not an issue, but yeah, I've gone through the prayer. That's fine. Yes.
Yes, Your Lordship.
Okay. And a bit on the general knowledge as to what is happening around the world. I understand that I must have misphrased it as civil unions or civil partnership relationships, but I understand civil partnership. Yeah.
With regards to maintenability won't be an issue here because Supreme Court has taken all the matters. So 139A, so here maintainability won't be an issue. Since there are cases in other high courts, Supreme Court has to transfer the cases to itself. And secondly, instead of just going through what we have written, it would be nice if you are just briefing on what you know about the country. Just reading out. See, once you're answering the question, you're recollecting from what you're reading, what you've read before. So it's easy for you also to process, to understand. When we keep on asking questions in between, it would be easy for you to comprehend the question and answer, come back. If you're reading through it, you're just concentrating on what you've written. It would be a little difficult for you to come back to the question or answer the question in between. Just as general suggestions, once you're just going through it, it's just general suggestions. That's it.
Thank you, Your Lordship.
Thank you, Your Lordship.
So you're all first year students. Where are you placed?
We both the first years in School of Law, Christ University, Bangalore.
I see. Okay. The respondent.
And we are second year students in MIMS.
Okay, I see. Narsi Munji Institute of Management Studies.
Yes, Your Lordship.
Grateful. So I think we'll leave
Yes,
the room.
everybody can leave the room now.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
All the best.